his life in the Khabib-Conor fight. Um, we're just going to talk about the final sequence to the takedown. Not really going to go into the nitty gritty of the nasty neck cranky jaw crushy choky thingy with bubbles that Khabib does to him, but I just want to look at this final sequence for takedowns. Conor at this time is a bit knackered. He's been punched quite a lot. He's a bit tired. Khabib seems to have got a second wind, throwing in some good punches and giving him some pressure. So Khabib has shot a double leg head on the outside. He's managed to get his hands together. Conor really hasn't really done a lot. He's managed to get his weight over the top. He's managed to get his hand on underneath Khabib's chin. This arm's not really doing anything, but what he's going to allow himself to be done is to be driven to the cage, which is basically what Khabib wants anyway. He wasn't looking for the takedown. He just wanted to get Conor to the cage. He's got some kind of level of lift on here. He's got some kind of forward of lean on here. He's driving his shoulder down and in. He wants to really separate out his legs, but he can't at the moment because Khabib has got his hands together. We're going to see as Conor's bum hits the cage, he's going to lift Khabib so that Khabib doesn't get to finish the takedown. So he manages to get his hand under the chin of Khabib and he manages to lift him up the hips. Okay, so he's managed to lift him up the hips. Khabib hasn't followed in to the control zone with a leg. Normally he would step into this position here, which would then allow him to lift Conor because he would have his weight underneath Conor's weight. But at this point, he's not done that. What we're going to see now is we're going to see Conor have difficulty because he's going to use this overhook, and Khabib uses the overhook against people. Okay, so we move a little bit further onwards. Khabib now, at this point, has switched out to a single leg. So he's moved his hands together. He's got the C grip or the S grip, you might want to call it. So we've got this shoulder driving into this shoulder. We have this arm with the palm facing at this point on this hand downwards, and it's a hook shape with the fingers. And we have the left arm with the hook shape facing upwards. So imagine that you formed your hands into two hooks and you hook them together. This is the C grip or the S grip, depending on what you want to call it. So Conor at this point is lifting and he's trying to separate the hands. So he's trying to kick this leg back a little bit and kick this hip back, and he's trying to separate the hands. Also, he's desperately trying to not let Khabib get him flat against the cage, with his hip facing outwards and with him managing to keep his shoulder on the cage, not flat. Khabib has a lot less options for reaps and things like that. So we move this a little bit forward and we see what Conor is going to do is he's going to hop along the cage as Khabib moves him, and he's going to drop his knee in across Khabib's hips. We're seeing Khabib run up into the control zone at this point, and we're going to see Conor hop and drive his shin in across the knee. The problem with Conor driving the shin in across the hips is that it's going to give, sorry about this, I can't get to the right spot. It's going to give Khabib his moment now to attack. All right. So he's tried to work with this leg before in this fight, and it hasn't worked. He has his drive up through the shoulder, so he's got some lift here, and he's driving in at this point. Conor has successfully used this to block the hips and not allowed Khabib to get in beforehand. And Conor is working on trying to separate out these hands. This part of his body is flush against the cage at this point, and Khabib's head is controlling Conor's head very, very well. So this lift is supposed to be working, but Khabib uses this effectively against all his opponents. He wants Conor, I don't know if he wants Conor, but he's going to react to Conor's knee being in this hip by stepping up over the foot. So he's going to step up over the foot. So I can't really take this slow enough, sorry. So now we see him put the knee in behind the back of Conor's knee. Come on, behave. We see the knee going behind the back of Conor's knee, and then we see him step through. Okay? So what he's doing, he's got Conor hopping. We can't see it at this rate. He's got Conor hopping in this direction, and he's going to drive his knee in behind Conor's knee, and then he's going to connect his foot to trip the opposite foot of Conor. Now, Khabib has more or less moved Conor's centre of gravity more towards his centre of gravity. He's driving everything in this direction, so Conor, he's got a foot based on the ground at the moment, but Khabib's foot is behind this. What he's basically going to do is going to push him over this foot and not allow him to put this foot back down again. He's just going to stop that foot moving. Yeah, it's not even particularly a sweep or a trip. He just literally, I can't see if I can, he literally just gets his foot in the way and drives him over so that he can't put his post in. And he drives Conor to the floor. Beautiful technique. And he lands with his knee behind Conor's leg. Conor really needs this knee flush against the cage, and he needs this foot flush against the cage, and he needs this leg to be flat to the floor if possible. He's being pushed with his shoulder against the cage, and Khabib is going to effectively use his underhook that he's got on this side to maintain Conor in this position. I've got to say, Conor does a fantastic job of balancing a moment. It's beautiful. So Khabib is reaching for this wrist at this time so that Conor can't post, but we're going to see Conor post out. Khabib grab the hips, and what Khabib is going to do at this point then is he's going to suck in one of Conor's legs. So we can see him sucking one of Conor's legs. He's also driving his head up underneath the underhook. All right. At this point, you'd be looking for either two things. You'd either be looking for him to have his head over his head if he didn't have the underhook. All right. But if he's got the underhook, we would want to drive our head up past the face and pin this arm on the cage. Conor at this point is really trying to work out what to do. So he might do two things. He might turn his back towards Khabib and put both palms down and build a base and try and run away. Or I think what he's been taught, it's too late for this now, but I think what he's learnt is that he needs to get an underhook to try and escape this, to try and get hold of this wrist, to try and get hold of the back of this tricep. I think that's what he really is intentionally going for. And Khabib is going to use that against him in a second. So we see that Khabib is trying to drive on that hip. He's straightening out the other leg, and he's going to capture that leg, and he's going to sit on that leg and stretch it out. Now, I've got to say this is a beautiful bit of balance from Conor. All right, he's got this overhook with Khabib, and he really doesn't want this overhook because he's being torsioned against the cage. He can't get his weight underneath him. There's no way he's going to get to be able to use this as a post. Imagine Khabib is driving his hips down on this and stretching this leg out behind him. It's almost impossible for Conor to get that leg out of there. And he really needs that leg to get up because you kind of need two legs to like walk and stuff. So as we see now, Conor is going to balance, and this is beautiful. And he is going to try and get in control of Khabib's wrist. All right, Khabib at this point wants to smash. So he's going to give a few punches, and he's going to try and hit Conor. But in essence, what he's giving Conor is giving Conor the inside bicep control. This is really nice by Conor. He's got his elbow down, he's got his forearm facing downwards, and he's got his palm on here. As I said in one of the last videos, that, you know, to be able to catch the wrist is an absolute nightmare. It can flail around all over the place. It's difficult to catch. But if you start up at the shoulder or the bicep, you can quite easily catch that. It can't move around. It can only move this much, while the wrist can move like over here. Yeah. So he's going to do a fantastic job of controlling the arm. And he puts his arm onto the bicep, and he's going to try and slide it down. And he's going to control the bicep at the moment, but really what he wants to do is to slide the hand down to the wrist. Okay, so he's controlled the bicep, stopping Khabib getting his hands together, and now he's got it down to the wrist. With the wrist control, it's a lot easier to control the arm if he's got a good tight grip, and he can push it against something like Khabib's hip here at this point, or something like that. So he's doing everything right. He's controlling this wrist. He's got an overhook. Maybe he wants to get rid of the overhook. He's slowly building his way back to his feet, but Khabib's just going to take it away from him now. So, Conor controls the wrist. He has to go back to controlling the bicep. Now, this is where we see the mistake happen. Well, it's not a mistake. I think he has to go for it. He wants to pummel in to get an underhook. He wants to get this hand in so that the underhook goes underneath Khabib's chin and grabs the back of the bicep. So he tries to pummel in over the top, and he tries to get that hand in. Obviously, Khabib's like, no way, you're not having that, matey. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my head underneath your armpit, and I'm going to stop you being able to pummel that in, all right? So Conor's doing a good job. He's still not falling over, but he's gone for that underhook, all right? So he's trying to pummel in to get that underhook. Khabib's head goes in the way and shoulder goes in the way, stops Conor being able to do that. So Conor then changes his mind. So he's going to try and take that hand down and stick his elbow in to get the underhook down this way, okay? Khabib, at this point, has managed to get his hand back under control. He's managed to get Conor's grip off his bicep. I mean, there's so much going on here. If we go back, he's just going to pummel, take his hand out, offer a punch, and then pummel into inside bicep control. Absolutely fantastic. So Conor is now going to try and stuff his elbow into this gap, which is good. He might get back to his underhook, but Khabib uses this against his opponents. So we're going to see how now Khabib uses this against Conor. So he's going to allow, well, I don't think he allows, but Conor manages to get his elbow into this gap, but Khabib has managed to get his hands together. He's gone back to that C grip. So his elbow is on the hip here. His palm of the hand of the right hand is facing outwards towards the cage, and the palm of the left hand is facing inwards. So he's got a really good grip around here. He's got the elbow on the hip, and now what he's going to do is he's going to pull Conor's hips away from the cage and drive forward with this shoulder and body weight. And what that is going to do is it's going to make Conor have to take that underhook out, and it's going to have to make him post, which automatically means that Khabib is not going to let Conor get that hand back in now. And those hands are forward, and there is no way that Conor is going to get his elbow back into that gap. This shoulder now is behind the armpit and shoulder of Conor, and this head is on his head, okay? We're going to see some great movement from Conor in a minute, stopping Khabib ragdolling Conor around as much as he has other opponents. So we'll just go move forward. Conor will try and get the elbow back in if he can base out, but we can just see where Khabib's hand is. It's just stopping that happening. He's got a great hook on the hips here, and he's got a great hook on the shoulder here. All right? So what Khabib wants to effectively do is he wants to effectively pull this hip out the way so that there's a gap between his hip and the cage, keeping that shoulder on it, and then drive down on these arms, bringing Conor's body weight here. So he'll kind of lift this hip slightly and then whip it out, and then he'll push his shoulder pressure down and inwards onto this arm. He hasn't quite got the arm in the usual place he wants it. Normally he likes to drive the shoulder in. I don't know if we actually see that. Yeah, so he manages to drive the shoulder in next to Conor's head. This because of the way that the shoulder is rotated, it's actually kind of out of its strongest position. It needs to be down and deep in there for this arm to function correctly. He can't really form such a strong base on this single post. So we're going to see Khabib try and whip his hips out. You see that little tiny whip movement there. Okay, so he lifts the hip and he tries to whip. But if we move forward, we might see where Conor's feet are. Let's just see where Conor's feet are. This is why he's not able to do it. Conor's feet are away from the cage, and the pressure is holding his hip on the inside of the cage. It's a fantastic move from Conor. It stops the lifting of the hip and the pulling of the hip away from the cage. His team or himself has realised this, or he's just reacting to the situation. And this is kind of stopping everything. It's absolutely beautiful. It's just stopping everything. Okay, so we're going to move forward. It's stopping that drive over the hands being effective. See how Khabib is trying to pull his hips away, trying to drive this down to the ground. Conor is super strong. This post is stopping that happening. Even with Khabib's massive physicality, it's not happening. It's not happening. It's not happening. Okay, now, so what this is going to do is it's going to give an opportunity again for Conor to try and get his elbow in for the underhook. But as soon as he starts to work towards those hands, starts to trap those hands, tries to go to that elbow, Khabib runs him over his hands again. But Conor is doing this fantastic job again. He's got his feet out here. He's got his hips against the cage. It's a beautiful way of stopping this, okay? So he's managing to stop it. He must be getting tired by now. He must be getting tired by now. And eventually what Khabib is going to do is he's going to make sure the weight stays on the feet, but he's just going to slowly move his hips forward, and he's stopping these legs. If you see this here, this is just amazing technique. He's been stopping these legs from being able to move forward. Yeah? Absolutely bonkers. That leg goes in front of those legs. He traps them, and those legs can't go forward. So Conor has to go onto his knees. Oof. Just amazing. And he's already controlling this. I mean, what level of wrestler is this? He's controlling the bottom of Conor's body, and he's controlling the upper part of Conor's body. Both of them are fantastic. He's using his hip against his hip. He's negating any forward movement at all from Conor. So Conor at this point is thinking, oh, well, now I've got a base here. I'm going to try and put that elbow in again. Yeah, I can't go forward. I can't move with Khabib's movement. So I need to try and put this elbow in here again. Okay? But in the act of that, what he's going to do is he's going to bring his body weight over a balance point. Khabib is just going to step up. He's going to put one foot in the control zone so he can push in this direction. He's going to bring his hips under Conor's hips. And with his body lock, he's going to risk, and I mean this is a risk, because he could have ended up with Conor on top of him. He's going to pull Conor in this direction. He's really looking where he wants to put Conor. Conor is going to explode backwards so that he doesn't end up there. So he ends up flat on Khabib. Now this is a good move from Conor, because if he can win the scramble, he'll get top control. Sadly, sadly, no one beats Khabib on the scramble. See, Conor is desperately trying to turn over. This... it's not a seat belt, it's a lap belt, isn't it? But it's come up to his chest. This lap belt is what's stopping Conor turning over. And in the act of trying to turn over, Conor's body weight's going to come over here, which is going to allow Khabib to put his hooks in. Look at that. Conor's even at this point trying to defend the top hook going in. He's got the bottom hook in, which is the important one. And Conor's going to hip heist out and get one leg out of this, which is going to stop Khabib taking his back. Look at that, controls the knee. He's already looking at breaking the hands, steps his hips heists over, but that hook just goes in. Oof, beautiful work from Khabib. Now he knows he's losing Conor, because Conor's turning his back to the floor, and Khabib is going to come up. He's setting up the arm in triangle. Turns up. Conor reacts by bringing his head up, posting and framing his elbow against the back of Khabib's head. He's not going to be able to turn his hips towards Khabib. He's managed to shuck his hips out. He managed to hip heist his hips out, or hip escape, I think you would call it. But sadly for Conor, Khabib is in control. And I'm not going to take it forward to the choke, because there's no need. That was just a beautiful sequence. Again from Khabib to take him down. I've tried to hit as many points as I could. I've probably missed a few. So if you spotted a few more, then tell me. This is great wrestling from both of them. Conor cannot really, be disregarded at this point. He did fantastic. Some of the ideas that he was using, or some of his reactions, were brilliant. So thank you very much. This is How to Wrestle Like Khabib. If you can do it, welcome to the UFC and welcome to the World Championships. Bye.